Now, coming up in a couple of days is that election, that selection that we have here in the UK. And of course, the parties are battling it out. Supposedly, they're putting on a show that there's all this, we're going to be better than this party, and these people are going to be better than these people, and they're going to do more for you than these people. And we know anyway, you and me, we know that it's all a facade. Whoever you vote for on Thursday, the government will get in. And that government will continue its policies against us. We've heard about the policies and laws that have been passed in so many countries now which are restricting free speech, they're restricting freedom. I've spoken in particular about the gagging law that's being used in Spain and that's now law, where you can be fined up to €300,000 for publicising a photograph of a police officer. So if you take a picture of a scene and the police officer is the main feature or is in the scene and you tweet that or put it on your Facebook or Google it or whatever, you could land yourself with a massive, massive fine. What is the world coming to? Well, Craig Murray of craigmurray.org wrote this back on the 18th of April, and it's entitled "Beware the Banana Postal Ballot." Yet another election is about to be held under the UK's dreadfully insecure postal ballot system, which an English judge who presides over electoral fraud cases has said, quote, would disgrace a banana republic. In a single case, Judge Murray had come across postal ballot fraud being committed in 14 different ways. There have in fact been many convictions for postal ballot fraud. Some of these are Labour councillors in Blackburn, where Craig personally came across a boarded up empty flat containing 15 registered postal voters. And they chased the Labour councillors from street to street as they collected bagfuls of uncompleted postal ballots. In that election, won by Jack Straw at 37%, Blackburn had the highest percentage of ballots cast by post in the UK. There have been numerous convictions for postal ballot fraud throughout the UK, but that's the tip of the iceberg, and most of the time they get away with it. The system was introduced by Blair, and I've no doubt that party advantage was in mind. There have been Tory convictions for postal ballot fraud in Birmingham, but Labour have been by far the biggest beneficiaries, to the extent that I've been puzzled why on earth the Condemn coalition had not repealed this awful legislation. The answer is, of course, that they're willing to sacrifice a little ground in the fake battle between red Tories and blue Tories in order to retain the postal ballot against the necessity of large-scale vote rigging in the effort to keep Scotland under Westminster rule. Well, we saw it there live on TV, ballots being filled in at the polling stations and ready packed ballots being tipped out of supposedly secured ballot boxes. There was one particular incident where a ballot box is opened on a table of counters and the seals are broke, and then the lady reaches in and pulls out a very neat stack of ballot papers and puts them down on the table, and then goes through the motions of tipping up the ballot box and shaking it, and nothing else comes out, obviously. And then these counters are sort of sitting there looking at each other like, but they're already done. What are we doing? Anyway, back to the article. Party political activists know this next point to be true, but it's almost unbelievable. There's an Electoral Commission regulation which specifically facilitates postal ballot fraud. Postal ballots must be physically mixed in with other ballots before counting, so that it's impossible to tell if the postal ballot result differs markedly from the voting in-person result. I can quite understand why they must be counted at the same time as other ballots, but physically mixed in? The 800,000 postal ballots registered in Scotland are one major reason why we cannot be complacent about the opinion polls. This is a wide open to fraud. Multiple voting or voting by non-existent ghost voters or people living elsewhere is perfectly possible at the ballot box, but much more different and time-consuming and much more open to detection. The rationale for the abandonment of the classic secret polling booth ballot is the basic method of voting, was that postal voting would increase voter turnout. In fact, voter turnout has steadily fallen since its introduction. I predict in England, where there's no realistic prospect of change from the old, tougher Tory parties, it will fall again. In Scotland, where there's a vision of real change, turnout will be up. But if anybody thinks the British state is going to let Scotland move closer to independence without fighting dirty, they are extremely naive. In future, there should be a return to the principle that normally your vote should be cast in person at the secret ballot. To get off your arse to vote is not too much to ask for maintaining democracy. Postal votes should again be provided only to those who have medical certification that they're unable to attend the polling station or evidence of living abroad. I favour tax certificates from a foreign country is the norm for the latter. So, this system, which was introduced by Blair, is openly and blatantly being used for ballot stuffing, where they, register, loads of people get registered at a particular address, which is physically there, but the people aren't physically there. And then all you need to do is nip round, collect all the ballot papers, fill them in as you want, and post them back, and bye-bye, there you go. You can stuff the ballots, you can stuff the ballot boxes all you want, and you don't have to actually go to the ballot. See, when you go to a polling station, you have to physically turn up, and they find your name on a list, and then there's a unique number on the back of the ballot paper, which is then written down next to your name, so that they know which ballot paper is yours, and then you go to a little box, and you put this X on a piece of paper in a box next to somebody's name, and then you fold it up and you go back and you show everybody that you're making your ballot, and you push it in the top of the box, and there you go, all proud, yes, I've done my bit for democracy, it's what we fought 2 world wars for, Well, it's not actually. What we fought 2 world wars for was to make lots of people rich. Well, a few people rich. Quite a small number of people rich, actually. And we just filled up the graveyards. But, it means that you haven't got to have people going round with different names at different polling stations with different addresses, and then they have to try and remember which one's which and blah, blah, blah. You just go to a flat, like it says there, with 15 registered postal voters, and then there's 15 ballots that you can go tick, 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 X, 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 seal them up, post them, gone. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is what we call democracy. And that's the performance that we're going to go through on Thursday. But as I say, the government will get in, and the policies will continue to, go against us, and we ultimately will suffer. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we can say no. We can say not in my name, no more. But it takes all of us. This is the thing, you see. We talk about, there's many more than us. There's, of us than there is of them. There's 650 of them in Parliament, and we're 60 million or whatever. And, we can overturn this system, and we can. Well, why don't we then? Why don't we just get on with it? I'll tell you why. Because X Factor's on. And EastEnders, and Britain's Got Talent, and the football, and there's some motor racing, and there's a woman has had a baby. A woman had a baby girl. A woman had a baby girl. That means we must all get excited about one woman having one baby girl, and that matters more than anything else that's going on in the world. So that's what we're going to focus our lives on. And I forgot to go to the polling station. I can't be bothered. It's politics. It's boring. We sound like petulant teenage kids. It's pathetic sometimes. Okay, let's move on to something else. Let's move on to global warming. Yeah, that old nugget. 25 years of predicting the global warming tipping point. For decades now, those concerned about global warming have been predicting the so-called tipping point, the point beyond which it'll be too late to stave off catastrophic global warming. It seems like every year the tipping point is close to being reached, and that the world must get rid of fossil fuels to save the planet. That is, until we pass that deadline and the next such tipping point is predicted. Would you believe it was 8 years ago today that the United Nations predicted we only had as little as 8 years left to avoid a dangerous global average rise of 2 degrees C or more? This failed prediction, however, has not stopped the UN from issuing more apocalyptic predictions since. Yes, the United Abominations once again doing their bit to prove that they are controlling the world in a one-world state. To celebrate more than 2 decades of dire predictions, the Daily Caller News Foundation presents its list of some of the greatest predictions made by scientists, activists and politicians, most of which we've now passed. 2015 is the last effective opportunity to stop catastrophic warming. World leaders meeting in the Vatican issued a statement saying that 2015 was the last effective opportunity to negotiate arrangements that keep human-induced warming below 2 degrees Celsius. Pope Francis wants to weigh in on global warming and is expected to issue an encyclical saying basically the same thing. Francis will likely reiterate that 2015 is the last chance to stop massive warming, but what he should really say is that the UN conference this year is the last chance to cut a deal to stem global warming, since last year when the UN said basically the same thing about 2014's climate summit. 2. France's foreign minister said we only have 500 days to stop climate chaos. When Laurent Fabius met with Secretary of State John Kerry on May 13, 2014, to talk about world issues, he said, quote, "We have 500 days to avoid climate chaos." Ironically, at the same time of Fabius's comments, the UN had scheduled a climate summit to meet in Paris in December 2015, some 565 days after his remarks. Looks like the UN is 65 days too late to save the world. 3. President Barack Obama, or Barry Soetoro, is the last chance to stop global warming. Yes, one man can save the world. He is the Messiah, even though he's looking grey and very, very old. When Obama made the campaign promise to, quote, slow the rise of the oceans, some environmentalists may have taken him quite literally. In 2012, the United Nations Foundation President Tim Wirth told ClimateWire that Obama's second term was the last window of opportunity to impose policies to restrict fossil fuel use. Wirth said, "It's the last chance we have to get anything approaching 2 degrees centigrade," adding that if we don't do it now, we're committing the world to a drastically different place. Even before that, then National Aeronautics and Space Administration Goddard Space Flight Center head James Hansen warned in 2009 that Obama only has 4 years to save the Earth. I wonder what they think about their predictions now. 4. Remember when we had hours to stop global warming? In 2009, world leaders met in Copenhagen, Denmark, to potentially hash out another climate treaty. That same year, the head of Canada's Green Party wrote that there was only hours to stop global warming. Quote, "We have hours to act to avert a slow-motion tsunami that could destroy civilization as we know it." Elizabeth May, leader of the Greens in Canada, wrote in 2009, "Earth has a long time, humanity does not. We need to act urgently. We no longer have decades, we have hours." We mark that in Earth Hour. 5. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Gordon Brown said there was only 50 days left to save the Earth. In 2009, it was a bad year for global warming predictions. That year, Brown warned there was only 50 days to save the world from global warming, the BBC reported, so you can trust that. According to Brown, there was no plan B. Brown has been booted out of office since then. I wonder what he's saying about global warming today. 6. Let's not forget Prince Charles's warning we only had 96 months to save the planet. It's only been about 70 months since Charles said in July 2009 that we would be irretrievably climate and ecosystem collapse, and all that goes with it. So the world apparently only has 26 months left to stave off an utter catastrophe. Well, we're way past that now, so Charles, any more predictions? Number 7. The UN's top climate scientist said in 2007 we only had 4 years to save the world. Ranjendra Pachauri, the former head of the Intergovernmental Plan on Climate Change, said in 2007 that if there's no action before 2012, that's too late. What we do in the next 2 to 3 years will determine our future, and this is the defining moment, he said. Well, it's 2015 and no new UN climate treaty has been presented. The only thing that's changing since then is that Pachauri was forced to resign amid accusations he sexually harassed multiple female co-workers.